Kimmy Donahue, how you doing today?
I am doing awesome. It is Friday.
Kimmy, I want to know this before we get into anything too serious. Is there a skill that some might deem useless that you feel very proud of that you maybe excel at more than others?
Ooh, a skill that may seem useless.
Or maybe underappreciated. Well, they're not useless. Maybe it's just not as appreciated as it should be.
I'm really good at origami. Like, I can make a paper crane in less than a minute with my eyes closed, for that matter. I don't know.
I think that definitely that last part counts to me, and I'm sure people don't appreciate the overall skill it takes in general. I'm sure they probably don't treasure the thing when it's finished as much or maybe as long as they should because it is fairly destructible, is it not?
Some do, yeah. But I do a lot of things. I would say that's probably the most useless one. But
For me, Kimmy, I would say it's picking up takeout and having it back in a very efficient amount of time, like when it's still hot. Like that's a skill I don't think people like. I feel like people always like order the food and they just wait around, and I'm getting anxious. Like you need to be going now. Like this needs to be
I
happening.
feel like the only place that knows how to do that is Jimmy John's, because that's literally what they market, is
Yeah,
being quick.
but sure, food I take seriously. It's like we're paying for this. Like what are we doing? Like let's get to it. So
Maybe there's your next
um,
business idea. It's like a super speedy, kind of like an Uber Eats, but extra quick, like a transporter, but for food,
listen,
for
don't
the
get me started
priority
on
clients.
don't get me started on Uber Eats and Grubhub because I still have yet to trust them to like take the same level of seriousness to delivering my food in a manner where I might want to eat it. So, but anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But I guess I wanted to move this over in a couple of areas. One, let's talk about insurance and something that maybe you might see as your time in the business as being, well, we'll call it underappreciated, right? Or maybe people deem useless coverage that you often have to have a conversation about. And there are people that they might enjoy their insurance. They don't necessarily have a disdain for the overall process, but there's something that you find yourself repeatedly talking about that people don't seem to grasp as much as they should.
Yes, I would say it's always those couple of endorsements that we just automatically add, but feel like we need to explain ourselves about. Is definitely on homeowners policies. Equipment breakdown coverage is huge, especially here in Arizona. People's AC units go out like crazy, especially in the summertime because it just gets so hot, here. So having that coverage is super important. So we just automatically include it, but I feel like it usually comes with an explanation because, it's an added cost and we explain it. Oh, this is included in the premium, but people want, they're smart. They want to know what that is. And probably service line coverage too has been a really hot topic for a lot of people. Also because we've seen some people need it recently too, and fortunately had the coverage. So I'd say those two endorsements have been a hot topic on the homeowners, and then on auto, I think rental cars just another one that we talk about a lot because people think, oh, I can just borrow my friend's car or something like that. But yeah, if your car's in the shop for a month, are you really going to Uber everywhere?
Well, all right. So that leads me to something even more interesting, and that's sort of that it was kind of doing what's best for the client without necessarily getting permission. That's like an aggressive way of saying it, but like people saying like, "Listen, we're just going to do business this way because we
Mhm.
believe in it and think that it's something that is a benefit to you." How long did it take to get to that sort of place where you're saying, "Listen, we're just going to do this because we're tired of talking about it, and we're going to talk to you about it sort of after it's already done and explain to you that sort of?" Because I think there's a lack of confidence in a way with other
Mhm.
agents that maybe don't necessarily have that ability to go that far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was one of those agents, especially first starting, you get worried as soon as you get pushback, like, oh, I'm going to lose the sale. Or, you want to write everybody and everything, especially when you're growing. So you just tack on whatever you can. So let's see, our brokerage is almost 4 years old. And this is year 13 for me in the industry. So it's taken me that long. We actually just recently implemented that, probably maybe a few months ago after we did have some claims or things coming up that just made sense to do that and said, okay, from every review on here on out, this is what we're talking about. We sent out email blasts, we sent out text blasts. That's all we're talking
Oh,
about.
really? So you kind of gave like a blanketed like heads up across the board to everybody that this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, that way it also forced us to talk about it too.
That's smart. And so, all right, two things then. Probably you had conversations, obviously, within the staff. I'm assuming there might have been some feedback. I don't know if pushback is being far enough, but and then two, what did you hear from the clients? Obviously, I'm sure you had a wide range of sort of responses on that, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit.
Yeah, I think so. There was a little bit of pushback from a couple producers. They, kind of the same mentality of when I first became an agent. You want to write everybody. You get scared of losing a sale because you're recommending a coverage. One of the things we talk about is, well, why are we in insurance? Why are we an agent? We're looking out for a client's best interest. This is what we recommend because we've seen this happen. So I think as soon as we start talking about that, they realize, oh, okay, that does make sense to talk about. And typically, the people that don't want those kind of coverages are typically price shoppers, which, any insurance agent listening to this knows that with that comes added service work in other areas. So it was one of those things that it's saving us time, because it's going to end up being a reshop or somebody that maybe ended up needing that coverage and it becomes a headache later.
And I mean, as far as the client's concerned, I mean, did you get a lot of objections from them, or is it something like, "Oh, thank you"? Was there more of a gratitude approach to it, saying, "Oh, thanks for sort of bringing this to our attention"?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. We actually had an amazing amount of people that were like, I didn't even know that existed, so shame on us for not offering that in the first place. So whether they chose to accept it or not, at least they know that it's an option. So that also helps you on a errors and omissions situation. There is, hey, we offered it, you declined it, end of story there. But the fact is that we offered it. So that's been another topic of, whether no matter what we're writing, personal lines or commercial, is offering. I mean, that's the whole point of being a broker, right? Is we have options. So if we're not actually presenting options and showing people that there's other stuff out there, but we did have a couple of clients, that maybe, they just don't want to pay extra. So that was their immediate objection on that.
And I mean, again, too, the faster you can get to sort of identifying the people you really want to do business with, probably the better, the more effective you guys are going to be in the agency as well.
Exactly.
Um, since it's like a new thing, I don't know if I want to go this far, but let's go for it anyways. How far do you think you could go up the ladder in terms of, I mean, because these coverages are relatively, I don't want to say small, insignificant, but I mean, an overall premium impact is not like a huge thing. But as
Mhm.
you work your way up into the commercial side of business and things like that, is this something that you want to look to implement in other areas?
I think so. Gosh, I'm sure you interview a lot of commercial coaches, but a lot of them will also talk about you don't always want to be the cheapest anyway. You want to poke holes in their existing policy and show them, hey, Mr. Client, if this happens, wouldn't you want to be covered for this? I mean, there's a lot of good policies out there. A lot of people have, the policies with the bells and whistles, but specifically, what I'm thinking of is contractors' policies. Yeah, contractors. I mean, I feel like a lot of them just get general liability and think they're good to go. And, there's maybe their equipment's not covered, or, they've got supplies in transit or something like that, And so there's all those little things that they're not little, but there's the things that they don't think about. And if you're an agent that's new to commercial and didn't know that there's those other coverages out there, you can run into big doo doo when they have a claim.
And contractors is a great example because they're, like you said, just even knowing that they need general liability a lot of times is half the battle, right?
Mhm.
I guess maybe from somebody that's obviously had a ton of experience in the industry, but I mean, as an agency owner, relatively still fresh in the game, I would say, right? I mean, 4 years is a long time to be established, but ultimately, there's agencies out there that have been there in business for 50, 100 years. What would you say to somebody that maybe doesn't feel like they have enough experience to start like dictating sort of like how things should go? Like they think like there's some magic number that they need to like eclipse to when they can start being like a real insurance agent.
Yeah, I say hire a coach. I have coaches for everything in my life, whether it's at the gym, insurance. Coaches are really good people to lean on. And then also just stay on top of your continuing education, go get a designation. I know some people poo poo on that because they're like, oh, it's just letters after your name. But if you actually listen to the material and learn from it, that's how I learned about the different contractors coverages. Is I didn't know that before taking my CIC classes and digging into the commercial lines and going, oh my gosh, there's so much that I didn't even know existed, and I'd been doing this for such a long time.
So you hinted at something that I kind of wanted to maybe get to, and that is sort of your varied interests. We talked about sort of nonsense interest in the beginning, but it does appear from my perspective that you are interested in quite a different amount of things at a
Yes.
fairly intense level. Um, how do you apply that approach? Because you don't talk about insurance a lot. I guess the question really is how do you find the confidence, I guess maybe continue with this theme, to sort of kind of be who you are, like sort of across the board, and also kind of use that to your advantage to just create awareness to your business and who you are and what you do?
I think that's just kind of turned into itself over the years too, of embracing your strengths and then delegating your what I call them areas of improvement instead of weaknesses. I think that's why I said rely on coaches too, is to help you with those things and hire people to fill in those gaps. But as far as confidence goes, I would say my number one thing is I'm not afraid to fail, so I just kind of go for it. Whether it's my hobbies that I do, whether it's even in business. Like I don't know too many people that are fans of cold calls. I know I'm definitely not, but if you have a hard phone call to make or something that you don't really want to do, you do it, and if you screw it up, embrace that and get better at it. So that's what makes me tick, is I'm not afraid to look like an ass. you know?
Well, so that I definitely think that's part of it, but I also the idea of the intensity level, right, of performing at somewhat of a higher level than just
Mm,
again a hobby, right? Is
yeah.
there something there that I feel like, because again, from what I can observe, like you said, in the gym, I think we briefly mentioned music before we sort of started recording here. Like I think motorcycles is another interest. Again, everything at a relatively more than a beginner or intermediate level, if I'm guessing right.
Mhm.
Is there something that at one point in time in your life you said, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right?
Yeah, I think it just comes from the competitive spirit in general. Like you want to win at everything, and you don't want to be sucky at it. But the whole point of that is not being afraid to suck at it when you're a beginner. You're going to biff it quite a bit, whether it is sports or whether it is business. Things like that. And then once you dive into it like that, that's when I catch traction.
All right, well then I'm gonna have to ask, is there a moment where that failure was like all encompassing and you weren't quite sure if you were going to move past it, or I guess maybe to a lesser extent, the most valuable failure that you did find, really encountered that led you to, I guess, the most beneficial place?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm sure any insurance agent has had the day, where they sit there and wonder, am I in the right place? I've stayed in the industry, for this long, but I've definitely made, career changes as far as companies or positions. I was a captive agent for a little bit, and sometimes you wonder, oh, if I would have stayed there, what would it look like now? But between captive agency, corporate role, and independent agency, I wouldn't have changed a thing. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in there. So I don't know if it was necessarily, I wouldn't call them failures, but definitely felt like I had a hard time finding home. So that's why I went into independent agency and made it my own.
What was the day? I was like hearing these stories. What was the day like where you made that decision to walk into the independent space and say, I think I can do this on my own? Because that's not an easy leap to take coming from a more structured or corporate environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I wanted to do. So I was at American Family from 2012, 13, 14, 15-ish or so, and dabbled as a producer in the independent world, but wasn't quite ready to open my own. I think because in my brain, I thought, oh, I have to have a bunch of capital and need more experience. So I did that for a little bit, and then was offered a corporate role, which was like recruiting and leadership, and I knew that was an area of improvement for me, so I leaned into that, but found that at least that particular environment, corporate, was not for me. What gave me the confidence to start my own was one of my peers at this corporate job walked into my office, closes the door, sits in front of me, and says, "Kimmy, why are you here?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, is it that obvious? Am I that disappointed? What's going on?" And he's like, "Well," he's like, you look unhappy. Why'd you take this job?" And I said, "Well, I thought it'd be a good resume builder. It was I could learn a lot from here, and I can use it to whatever's next." And he slams his hand on the desk and says, "Why the f do you need a resume when we all know you're going to open up your own agency?" I was like, "Oh, okay, that must have been the green light for me," and
Huh.
that's what I did next. And it worked out really well. Financial advisors would kick my ass for saying this, but I cashed out my 401k from that job, and that's what I used to start the agency. It literally scratched nothing. It was an even bigger hurdle because I'd been in corporate for almost 2 years. I didn't stay in contact with a lot of my networks or any of my lead flows. So I had to start all that over as well. So
They don't make too many insurance movies, but I'm pretty sure you just wrote like the first two opening scenes of like, like it's not. Very rarely does that sort of moment open up so bluntly, I guess, because again,
yeah, it
like somebody
was.
saying to you, you're gonna. It had to have been a bit of a surreal or wild experience to have it sort of thrown back at you. Probably, I'm assuming you had been thinking about that for some time for somebody else to pick up on it like that.
Yeah, he's an extremely good leader. He actually got out of the insurance space completely as well, and is now a CEO of a construction company, I believe. So he's definitely someone to keep close, and has been a mentor in my life. So that was a big moment for sure.
I mean, now having had that sort of, I guess, eye-opening experience, now again 4 years in, do you see what's next? Like, what do you what's the thing that somebody would slam their hand on the desk and say, what are you still doing this for, Kimmy? What is the thing that you need to shake things up with next? I mean, I would imagine it's still in the agency, but is there something that you're just not really happy with? I mean, in addition to mandating equipment breakdown and line coverage on policies.
Yeah, I think the next step is really leaning into commercial more. I look at our reports every day, and we are a primarily personal lines agency, which is great because that's our bread and butter. But we have several talented producers that are good at commercial, and I think if we focus more on that, we're still going to write personal lines, but finding an industry that we just dominate the commercial space, which again includes hiring a coach, listening to said coach, and doing our homework. So that's what's next is that.
Yeah, and you definitely have a lot of agencies that if they don't openly say that, that's something that they at least think about in the back of their mind, that somebody might openly say to them in an evaluation meeting, like, why aren't you doing this more? What is that thing that you would say to maybe other agencies that are in a similar crossroads that sort of you've gone through to sort of get to this point? Is there anything that you've learned that they should pay attention to as well?
Yeah, I think lead generation is the two words that any agency should focus on. Is regardless of what the market does, the good news is we're in an industry that everyone needs insurance. It's just a matter of talking to enough people. So if your pipeline dries up, your SOL. So really focusing on your database and cross selling. And the reason I say bringing up a coach is while some of us can be really great business owners or really great producers or great leaders, not everybody's good at creating systems and processes like me. So that's why I hire help for that. And I think once you get that down, everything runs like a well-oiled machine, with systems.
I'm going to sneak this last one. I want to kind of get to that because you've mentioned it quite a few times, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I think that there is maybe still a little bit of a stigma is a strong word, but people maybe don't necessarily think to formalize that sort of coach mentee like scenario as much as maybe you probably do. Why do you think there's that hesitation to get like formalized, like official help in certain areas?
I think people are scared of accountability.
Hmm.
I think once you get a coach, they're going to tell you what you need to change, and sometimes it's quite an ego check. It's especially if you're the business owner, you've built this thing with your sweat and blood and tears, and your identity is attached so much to what you've built. And I'm saying this from experience because this is literally what I'm going through. And if somebody tells you that your baby's ugly, it hurts. So I think a lot of people are scared of that, and same thing with the accountability piece. You're literally paying someone to tell you what to do. And I know some people poo-poo on that, but if that's what's going to hold you accountable, that it pays for itself and then some. Same thing with like a trainer at the gym. I use this as an example. I know how to work out. I know how to lift. I can get my butt in the gym, but there's something about a trainer that you have to check in with every week. And it feels yucky to tell them if you didn't do what you said you're going to do. And if someone's a good coach, they're going to push you out of your comfort zone and make you do things that you wouldn't have normally done on your own.
All right, Kimmy, I've got three more questions for you. And the first one is, what's one thing you hope you never forget?
That everyone has different perspectives. So I think especially as a leader and coaching and leading your team is asking enough questions. Actually, I'm going to change my answer. Something not to forget is to ask more questions. It's easy to assume something, on your own from your perspective, but if you ask enough questions, you're going to learn something, and it's going to make you that much better of a leader.
All right. Well, speaking of learning something, on the other side of that, what is one thing you still have yet to learn?
Oh gosh, everything. I think that's what makes me keep going, is just knowing that there's always room for improvement, and just be a student of the industry, and a student of yourself. One of the things I really want to get better at is leadership. I think I'm good at getting people excited about things, but the accountability piece I can get better at. So as far as here I am talking about, I want a coach that holds me accountable. I need to be doing the same thing for my team.
All right, Kimmy, last question. If I were to hand you a magic wand of sorts to reshape, change, alter, speed up perhaps any part of the industry, what is it, where is it going, and what is it doing?
Oh, this is such a rabbit hole. Uh, let's see here. Expedited wholesaler underwriting. I think right now, so many places are just understaffed that customer service and getting things done in a quote timely manner has been tough for everybody. But I would really like to see more of the insurance space get involved in the crypto stuff. I'm still learning about it myself, but I think there's going to be some insurance companies pretty soon that allow payments with crypto. Um, maybe insurance for companies that do such things. So we'll see. I'm sure someone's working on it, but it'll be exciting to watch that grow.
Kimmy, this has been fantastic. I'm going to leave it right there.
Awesome. Thank you.